Divers, coming to you from Studio D. The Deep Dive Podcast proudly presents Hollywood Hype, a series that looks at the gimmicks, tie-ins, and publicity stunts that lured unsuspecting patrons into movie theaters. I'm Tom Feeney, two-time Regional Emmy Award-winning producer and writer for Wang's Chop Movie Magazine. This episode, we look at the miserable 2024 Memorial Day box office and what the motion picture and movie theater industries can do, if anything, to stop the bleeding. In a somewhat less than thrilling box office showdown, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, just managed to edge out the Garfield movie on the North American box office charts. That Sunday, both Warner Brothers and Sony tried to claim that their respective films topped the charts. By Monday's estimates, Furiosa ended up with $26.2 million for the weekend and $32 million over the 4-day holiday period. Meanwhile, Garfield was close behind with $24 million for the weekend and $31.1 million total. It was a photo finish to see who would be the best of the worst. Now, the Memorial Day weekend of 2024 was in fact the worst in almost 3 decades, not counting 2020 when theaters were shut down due to COVID. Now compare that to the same holiday weekend in 2023, as Disney's The Little Mermaid remake had a stellar debut at $118 million. Overall, ticket sales this Memorial Day were 22% behind last year and a worrying 41% behind 2019, according to analytics company Comscore.
It's time for a new wasteland! I want what you want!
A world of chaos. Remember me?
Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Rated R. Only in theaters May 24th.
Furiosa, the fifth film in George Miller's Mad Max series, had a particularly disappointing showing. The R-rated movie starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth was expected to pull in $40 to $45 million over the holiday. Even that wouldn't have been great given its $168 million budget. Globally, Furiosa has earned $65 million so far, making it unlikely to match the success of 2015's Mad Max Fury Road, which opened with $45 million and grossed $380 million worldwide. That's a lot of math. Now, despite positive reviews, analysts think Furiosa struggled because prequels often don't perform as well as sequels, especially without the original stars. Add to that, it didn't attract much interest beyond its core audience of older male viewers. But what about that fat orange lasagna-loving, Monday-hating cat?
Hi, you hungry little guy? Whoa, you are a hungry little guy. Garfield, dinner time!
I apologize in advance. The eating you're about to see will not be pretty.
This Memorial Day weekend. He's always hungry.
Oh, cheddar. Cheese is my love language.
He's always sarcastic.
You ever jumped a train? I've never jumped.
And he always hates Mondays.
We're gonna need the big scale!
Does she need to announce it to the whole office?
Still in the field and I'm back on the road.
Featuring new music by Keith Urban and Snoop Dogg.
Ride with these cats so I'm never alone.
And that's why we should go from Sunday to Tuesday.
The Garfield movie.
No, please, no. Ow, it's so hot. Ow, it's really hurting. Ow, ow, ow. You saw nothing.
Memorial Day weekend, rated PG.
Garfield actually had a decent start for a family film despite being at the lower end of its $30 to $35 million projections. With a budget of over $60 million, it's already generated $66.3 million overseas and $91 million globally, setting it up fairly well for its theatrical run. So what's going on here? Is it merely a continuation of COVID fatigue? Is it the impact of lower-cost, high-definition televisions flooding the market along with the deluge of streaming services that gives viewers more choices than ever? Are people tired of spending exorbitant prices for movie tickets and concessions? Maybe it's the bad behavior of many movie patrons who can't keep their cell phones off and their mouths shut. And what about the TikTok effect, where younger generations prefer to get their entertainment in short bursts instead of longer narratives? Or was it just an inevitable part of the always changing ways that people want to view their content? Even now, some early adopters are using virtual reality headsets like the Meta Quest and Apple Vision Pro to create an all-encompassing experience when viewing movies or TV shows. Now, another issue that looms over the movie theater industry: prices. According to movie data site The Numbers, movie ticket prices have more than doubled since 1996, and that's not even counting the incredible cost of movie concessions. A family of 4 on a night out at the movies could easily spend upwards of $200. That sounds insane, especially when considering that a decent 65-inch 4K TV at Walmart costs less than $400. Yes, theaters are struggling, and there are many reasons why. But are there any solutions? Well, before we get to that, you just know I can't get through this episode without a little history lesson. Let's turn back the clock about half a century. Before the me decade of the 1970s, the Memorial Day weekend was considered the worst weekend of the year to release a movie by both studios and theater owners. Why? Well, you can blame the American public school system. Before the 1970s, there was no standardized public school schedule. That meant school districts could dictate when and how long school days, weeks, and years for that matter could last. Today, it's the individual states that decide, and while there are variations from state to state, the overall school year is roughly the same. Okay, so what does this have to do with Memorial Day and movies? Okay, the motion picture industry shied away from the holiday weekend because many grade school age students were still in class at that time. Now you may be asking yourself, even way back then, Memorial Day was a holiday. Why would kids still be in school? Well, it might clear things up to know that the holiday known as Memorial Day was not made an official 3-day holiday weekend until Congress made it into law in 1968. That's right. Originally, Memorial Day was called Decoration Day and was observed every May 30th, no matter what day of the week that fell on. The Uniform Monday Holiday Act was passed in order to make certain national holidays were part of a 3-day weekend, and to give federal employees a nice long weekend a few times a year. So the long Memorial Day weekend we all know is a fairly recent occurrence. Congress's new law didn't even take effect until 1971. Now, to make a long story even longer, the reason the movie studios avoided the holiday in the past is because there was no holiday as we know it, and many kids just weren't out of school yet. So, the big box office weekend actually was yes, indeed, the 4th of July weekend, smack dab in the middle of summer. In fact, that 4th of July weekend in 1975 ushered in the summer movie blockbuster.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws. From the best-selling novel, Jaws. Rated PG. Maybe too intense for younger children.
The massive success of Jaws proved that audiences will leave the beach, wash the sand off their feet, and go to the movies in droves. But the Memorial Day weekend was still considered a dead zone for films. American audiences were not yet conditioned, so to speak, to go to the movies that weekend. It was a time for solemn remembrance, not to mention family gatherings, cookouts, etc. So what changed this perception? Well, it was a movie that premiered in just a few theaters on May 25th, 1977, and proceeded to blow away any and all expectations.
Don't be alarmed. It's only a laser sword fight. Don't be scared. It's only the Death Star destroying another world. Relax. It's only a movie, and it's all for fun. Director George Lucas and 20th Century Fox present Star Wars. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
Now, there are all kinds of myths and legends regarding the theatrical release of Star Wars. Initially, theater owners had little to no interest in booking George Lucas's little space fantasy film. In fact, less than 40 theaters nationwide agreed to show the movie, believing it would be a box office bomb. Now, 20th Century Fox, the studio behind Star Wars, resorted to an unusual tactic to convince theater owners to book the movie: blackmail. That's right. You see, Fox had another big tentpole film set for release that year.
The Other Side of Midnight. The romance of passion and power.
Get out.
It is a time to dream, to fall in love, to feel the heartbeat of every living moment, of every endless day. It is a time for heroes. A time of sudden fame and startling power.
He'll murder me in my sleep, please.
That's it. I told you on the phone that's as far as I go.
We can't stop now!
I cannot go through with it.
The Other Side of Midnight. The romance of passion and power.
The Other Side of Midnight, based on a popular romance novel by Sidney Sheldon, was tapped to be Fox's big summer hit. Theaters were clamoring to run the film as it was meant to be 1977's big summer release. In a move that would have made Don Corleone proud, Fox execs made those theater owners an offer they couldn't refuse. If you want The Other Side of Midnight for your theater, you have to book Star Wars. It was a bold and risky move. Did it pay off? Well, have you ever heard of The Other Side of Midnight? No? Well, there's your answer. Midnight failed to score with audiences and critics, only grossing $24 million against a budget of $9 million. Now, that's not to say that 20th Century Fox didn't run into a little bit of trouble by pulling that stunt. Several theaters sued Fox, citing a 1951 law that banned the practice of forcing theaters to book lesser movies if they wanted the major releases as well. The theater owners actually won the lawsuit, and Fox was fined $25,000. I'm sure they wiped their bitter tears with the hundreds of millions of dollars the studio made from Star Wars. And it proved that with the right film, people would flock to theaters at the beginning of summer instead of the dog days. Now, the unprecedented success of Star Wars took Hollywood by surprise, no doubt. And it took until 1979 until studios began programming their release schedule to take advantage of the Memorial Day weekend. And once again, it was 20th Century Fox that took the chance. And once again, it was a space-based adventure that took over the box office. The big difference being, this film wasn't fun for the whole family.
Attention to the crew of the commercial vessel Nostromo. A word of warning. A word of warning. A word of warning. Alien. Coming this summer to a theater near you.
And ever since then, the Memorial Day weekend has been prime time for movies tapped to be blockbusters. In light of the dismal 2024 box office results, the question must be asked, is this another sign that movie theaters are on an unavoidable slide into obsolescence? Well, there's no way to accurately answer that, of course. The season may be, however, an anomaly worthy of an asterisk in the history of Hollywood. Not because of the continuing recovery from the pandemic, but because there was another major reason for this year's lull. The recent strikes by both the Writers Guild and Screen Actors Guild unions. Those strikes ground production in Hollywood to a screeching halt, severely impacting movies that were being made at the time and movies that were scheduled to be made. This has seriously affected the number of films ready for release this year. No matter what the cause of this year's awful Memorial Day box office numbers are, the real question remains, what can movie studios and theater owners do to stop the carnage? One possible answer: boutique theaters. You create a more luxurious experience to make up for the greater customer expense. Smaller chains like the Alamo Drafthouse theaters offer gourmet food, movie-themed events, high-quality projection, including IMAX, and best of all, zero tolerance for any audience shenanigans. It's true. Just ask celebrity/business consultant Jeff Goldblum.
Hello, Alamo Drafthouse. My name is Jeff Goldblum. I'm an actor and, not many people know, a noted, if I may, business consultant. Yes, that's true. So, when Alamo Drafthouse asked me to help them do something about people talking and texting during the movies, I said, hey, guys, have you heard of a little picture called Jurassic Park? Mr. Steven Spielberg from '93? And they said, yes, we have seen Jurassic Park. And so then I said, let me make some calls. Cut to, let me introduce you to Sheila. Alamo Drafthouse's new anti-texting and anti-talking Velociraptor. You know, talking and texting during the movie, that's a no-no. Now, maybe you're saying to yourself or to me, hey Jeff, is this safe? Is this practical? Should Alamo Drafthouse do this just because they can? Here's my answer. That's not my problem.
With these luxury theaters becoming more and more commonplace, where does that leave the smaller mom-and-pop cinemas? One company has found a way to not only survive, but thrive in this difficult climate. Renew Theaters is a nonprofit entity that currently operates several theaters in areas of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. It's called a pass-through business. Renew manages the theaters, but the individual movie houses keep the profits from tickets and concessions. The goal here is to make these theaters a part of the local community through outreach, carefully curated programming, film education, and fostering a creative expression. Classic movies and film festivals are mixed with new releases to best serve the public interest. And this approach has fostered tremendous loyalty among patrons. Renew's Ambler Theater, which opened back in 1928, had a record year in 2023, welcoming 80,000 visitors.
The 30-foot neon sign beckons moviegoers and welcomes everyone to the town of Ambler.
There's something special about coming to this theater with all of its history.
The Ambler Theater was built in 1928, but fell into disrepair by 2001 when some businessmen bought the theater. At that time, Bernadette Doherty worked on downtown economic development for Ambler.
They sold the theater to Ambler Theater, Inc., where we are now, and then began the journey of fixing up a 1928 building with all its problems but all its potential.
As theater co-director Chris Collier showed me, there were layers of paint that had peeled away decades before and holes in the ceiling.
I always like to joke that when it rained outside, it rained inside, and the theater just really looked bad.
3 beautiful theaters, including one with original curtains, show first-run and classic films. And the refreshment stand has all the favorites, including popcorn that smells and tastes as good as it looks.
This became the anchor. Everybody came to town because of the movie theater.
Decades after her debut, the Ambler Theater is back to earning rave reviews, bringing people together in the way only movie theaters can.
There's something about sitting in a dark auditorium with other people laughing, crying, feeling suspense together that this is our history.
It's a far cry from the sterile, corporate, cookie-cutter theaters run by chains like AMC and Regal Cinemas, one of which, Regal, has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and the other, AMC, seems to be similarly circling the drain. You know, it kind of reminds me what happened to vinyl records. 40 years ago, vinyl was king. People flocked to their record stores to purchase new releases, meet and talk with other music lovers and collectors, and then go home to listen to the warm analog tones emerging from the needle and grooves. Then CDs arrived. Crisp, clear, and more user-friendly, they quickly took over the record industry and left poor vinyl in the dust. But here's the thing. For the past decade and a half, sales of vinyl have grown and grown, surpassing CD sales in 2022. With streaming music having taken over the vast majority of music consumption, it can kind of feel like too much. There is a lot to be said in favor of something simpler. It could be listening to a vinyl record with a wired set of headphones, or sitting in a small local theater watching a classic film with a group of fellow movie lovers. And this isn't just about nostalgia. Anyone can appreciate the zen-like pleasure of an uncomplicated, shared experience. But then again, you better believe I'm going to go see Deadpool and Wolverine in the biggest, loudest multiplex I can find. Thanks for listening. If this is the first time you've heard this podcast, check out our past episodes available on almost all podcast providers and subscribe so you don't miss a single one. If you like what you hear, write us a review. We would love to know what you think. Or drop us a line at thedeepdivepodcast@gmail.com or on our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter/X feeds. You can find links to those and our awesome t-shirt store in the bio of our Instagram page. All clips used in this podcast are meant for educational purposes only and not to infringe on existing copyrights. Hollywood Hype is part of the Deep Dive Podcast family and a production of Automaton Studios.